Do you remember the meals your grandparents swore by, the ones tucked away in old cookbooks and rarely made today? These were the recipes that turned sparse pantry staples into warm, satisfying dishes that kept families fed through tough times. From sweet autumn treats to hearty, comforting mains, each one tells a story of ingenuity, resilience, and flavor that has stood the test of time. Today, we're rediscovering 30 forgotten fall recipes from the Great Depression that still taste amazing and are ready to inspire your table once again. Cornmeal mush with molasses. There's something about the smell of cornmeal sizzling in a pan that instantly transports you back to simpler times, when kitchens smelled like autumn mornings and frugality was the measure of culinary genius. Cornmeal mush, served warm and drizzled with molasses, was a staple of Depression-era households. A dish born out of necessity, yet surprisingly comforting. Families across the country stretched their meager rations with this humble porridge, turning a few basic ingredients into a breakfast that could fortify children for a day of chores and school, and adults for a day of work that demanded every ounce of energy. Originally, cornmeal mush was not meant to impress anyone with fancy presentation. It came from practicality. Cornmeal was inexpensive, shelf-stable, and available in most pantries, while water or milk could be substituted depending on what was on hand. Sometimes a pinch of salt or a knob of butter would finish the dish, and if luck allowed, a spoonful of molasses would lend a deep, rich sweetness, dark as the long evenings of that era. It's easy to forget that these were the flavors that sustained entire families, that a little molasses on hot cornmeal was both a treat and a necessity. Preparing it is straightforward, yet it carries a rhythm and ritual that modern fast breakfasts rarely emulate. You stir the cornmeal into boiling water, careful not to let it clump, and watch as it thickens, a slow transformation from gritty powder to a soft, creamy porridge. The aroma itself is a comfort, a signal that something warm and nourishing is coming. Once set and sliced, it's fried until golden brown, the edges crisp while the center remains tender. A drizzle of molasses over the top finishes the dish, adding sweetness and a slight bitterness that balances the earthiness of the cornmeal. Each bite is simple yet satisfying, a reminder that sometimes the most basic ingredients hold the most memory and meaning. In today's age of smoothie bowls, overnight oats, and artisanal granolas, cornmeal mush may seem archaic, even quaint. But there's a reason it survived through generations of hardship. It fills the stomach, warms the heart, and carries the taste of resilience. It's not flashy, it's not trendy, but it's honest food. Food that reminds us that comfort doesn't always come from complexity, but from care, tradition, and the quiet ingenuity of making the most out of what you have. Eating a slice of cornmeal mush with molasses today, you're tasting history, and perhaps a little reminder to slow down and savor what really matters. Potato and onion bake. There's a quiet magic in the combination of potatoes and onions, especially when baked slowly until tender and golden. During the Great Depression, this humble dish was more than just comfort food. It was a testament to ingenuity, stretching a few simple ingredients into a meal that could feed an entire family. Potatoes were inexpensive, filling, and widely available, while onions added flavor without costing a fortune. Together, they created a harmony of textures and aromas that could make even the simplest kitchen feel like home. The origins of this dish lie in necessity. Families layered thinly sliced potatoes with onions, a pinch of salt, and sometimes a bit of leftover bacon drippings or a splash of milk if they were lucky. The beauty of the potato and onion bake was its flexibility. It adapted to whatever ingredients were on hand, yet the result was always satisfying. This wasn't haute cuisine, but it carried care and practicality, a daily reminder that even in hardship, simple food could nourish both body and spirit. Preparing it today is just as comforting. Layers of potato and onion, seasoned and drizzled with a touch of butter or oil, are baked until tender and lightly crisped at the edges. The earthy aroma fills the kitchen, and each bite echoes the patience and love of the kitchen's past. This dish reminds us that richness comes not from extravagance, but from warmth, simplicity, and the ingenuity of generations who made every meal count. Creamed cabbage soup. There's something unexpectedly comforting about a bowl of creamed cabbage soup. Its pale green broth swirling with creamy richness and the faint sweetness of simmered vegetables. During the Great Depression, this humble soup was more than just sustenance. It was a lifeline, a dish that could fill hungry bellies without straining meager budgets. Cabbage, one of the cheapest and most versatile vegetables of the era, grew abundantly in home gardens, stored well in root cellars, and could stretch a meal further than almost anything else. A splash of milk or cream, when available, transformed the simple broth into something warm and nourishing, turning minimal ingredients into a hearty, satisfying dish for the whole family. The origins of creamed cabbage soup lie in resourcefulness and necessity. Families relied on what they had, using onions sautéed in a little fat, a sprinkle of flour, or even a dash of salt pork to elevate the flavors. Each household had its own variation, reflecting both the ingredients at hand and the cook's ingenuity. Some added a few herbs, a touch of butter, or a handful of leftover vegetables, creating a version uniquely theirs. It was never about extravagance, it was about making simple, affordable ingredients comforting and memorable. Preparing it today is just as satisfying. Start by gently sautéing onions until fragrant. Then add chopped cabbage and broth, letting the mixture simmer until tender and infused with flavor. A splash of milk or cream brings silkiness to the broth, while seasoning with salt, pepper, and fresh herbs highlights the natural sweetness of the cabbage. The slow simmer allows flavors to meld, releasing a gentle, homey aroma that fills the kitchen and invites anticipation. The emotional resonance of creamed cabbage soup runs deep. Steam curling from a bowl, the warmth spreading with every spoonful. It's a reminder that even in lean times, careful attention to simple ingredients could nourish both body and spirit. Sitting down with a bowl today, you're tasting more than cabbage. You're tasting history, resilience, and the enduring magic of home-cooked meals. Each bite carries the quiet pride of generations who turned humble produce into comfort, proving that simplicity, patience, and care can create something timeless and deeply satisfying. Apple and oat pudding. There's something irresistibly autumnal about the aroma of apples and oats baking together, a scent that conjures cozy kitchens, crisp fall mornings, and the warmth of home. During the Great Depression, apple and oat pudding was both practical and comforting, a dessert that stretched limited resources while satisfying the desire for sweetness. Apples were often harvested from backyard trees or purchased cheaply at local markets, while oats were inexpensive, shelf-stable, and filling. Together, they created a wholesome, nourishing dish that felt indulgent without breaking the family budget. The origins of this pudding lie in frugality and creativity. A handful of oats, chopped apples, a splash of milk or water, and a little sugar or molasses could be transformed into a tender, aromatic dessert. A pinch of cinnamon or nutmeg added subtle warmth, giving the dish seasonal flair. Families relied on these simple ingredients to create something that nourished both body and spirit. a quiet celebration of harvest and home, even during hard times. Preparing it today remains simple and evocative. Apples are peeled, chopped, and combined with oats, sweetener, and spices, then baked until golden and tender. The oats lend a gentle chewiness, the apples release natural sweetness, and a drizzle of cream or yogurt elevates the dish further. Its emotional resonance lies in its connection to family, tradition, and the comforting knowledge that even modest ingredients treated with care can create something timeless and deeply satisfying. Each spoonful carries the taste of history, resourcefulness, and a little touch of autumn magic. Pumpkin fritters. There's a certain kind of magic in pumpkin fritters, the way the aroma of cinnamon and fried pumpkin fills a kitchen, promising warmth and a little indulgence even on the leanest of days. During the Great Depression, pumpkin fritters were a popular treat, a clever way to turn leftover or homegrown pumpkin into something special. Pumpkin itself was abundant and inexpensive, often grown in backyard gardens or stored from the fall harvest. And with just a few pantry staples, flour, eggs, a pinch of sugar, and a dash of spice, families could create a sweet, satisfying snack that felt far more luxurious than its humble ingredients suggested. The origins of pumpkin fritters are rooted in both necessity and celebration. In an era when store-bought sweets were rare or unaffordable, fritters offered a little joy amid hard times. Some households added molasses or a bit of brown sugar to sweeten them, while others might fold in oats or cornmeal for texture, making every bite nourishing and hearty. Fried in a small amount of lard or vegetable oil, the fritters puffed slightly and browned beautifully, giving the exterior a satisfying crispness while keeping the inside soft and tender. They were simple to prepare, yet carried a sense of care, a moment of sweetness to brighten an otherwise difficult day. Preparing pumpkin fritters today is a ritual that connects us to the past. The pumpkin is mashed until smooth, combined with flour, eggs, and seasonings, and gently dropped by spoonfuls into hot oil. The sizzling sound as they cook is comforting, almost meditative, and the golden fritters that emerge smell like autumn itself. Served warm with a drizzle of molasses, honey, or even a dusting of powdered sugar, they are simultaneously rustic and indulgent, a perfect balance of nostalgia and flavor. The emotional resonance of pumpkin fritters lies in their simplicity and the memories they evoke. They conjure images of children sneaking bites fresh from the pan, of families sharing a small moment of sweetness amid daily struggles. Today, as we swipe past fleeting food trends or rely on packaged snacks, pumpkin fritters remind us that joy can be found in humble ingredients, careful preparation, and shared meals. Each bite carries the history of resilience, creativity, and the comforting power of seasonal food, proving that some simple pleasures never go out of style. Stewed apples with cinnamon. There's a simple joy in the scent of apples simmering with cinnamon, filling a kitchen with warmth that feels like a hug from the past. During the Great Depression, stewed apples with cinnamon were a beloved autumn treat, affordable and easy to make with what families already had on hand. Apples were often sourced from backyard trees, local markets, or even slightly bruised fruit that might otherwise go to waste. With a sprinkle of sugar or drizzle of molasses and a touch of cinnamon, these humble ingredients became a comforting, sweet, and satisfying dish that could stretch across a family table. The origins of this recipe lie in practicality and creativity. Families often added a splash of water, milk, or cream to soften the apples, and butter enriched the flavor when available. Cinnamon, sometimes considered a luxury, elevated the dish without significant cost. Today, preparing stewed apples with cinnamon remains simple. Peel, core, and slice the apples. Simmer gently with a little liquid, sugar, and cinnamon until tender, letting the flavors meld into a fragrant compote. Served alone over oatmeal or on bread, it's versatile, wholesome, and deeply comforting. The emotional resonance of this dish is profound. It evokes crisp autumn mornings, warm kitchens, and the quiet joy of simple ingredients treated with care. Each spoonful carries ingenuity, tradition, and a touch of history, a timeless reminder that comfort can come from the simplest of recipes. Salt, pork, and beans. Salt, pork, and beans might not win beauty contests, but during the Great Depression, this humble dish was the epitome of comfort, nourishment, and resourcefulness. Families needed meals that could stretch for days, feed many mouths, and rely on affordable, shelf-stable ingredients. Salt pork provided fat and savory depth that fresh meat often couldn't, while beans offered protein, fiber, and bulk. Together, they created a hearty, filling dish that warmed stomachs and lifted spirits, even in the leanest times. The recipe's origins are rooted in frugality and creativity. Beans, navy, pinto, or kidney, were inexpensive and easy to store, while salt pork added richness and flavor. Onions, a pinch of dried herbs, or a slow simmer brought the flavors together, filling kitchens with a savory aroma that signaled home and sustenance. Preparing it today preserves that spirit. Soak and cook the beans until tender, slowly render the salt pork, and allow the flavors to meld into a rustic, satisfying stew. Some modern cooks add molasses or hot sauce, but even in its simplest form, it delivers warmth and comfort. Salt pork and beans evoke resilience and family tradition, reminding us that patience, care, and simple ingredients can produce meals that nourish both body and spirit. Every bite carries history, ingenuity, and the quiet pride of families who made every meal count. Carrot and parsnip mash. There's a subtle elegance in mashed carrots and parsnips, two humble root vegetables that together create a side dish of warmth, sweetness, and comfort. During the Great Depression, this mash was a clever way to turn inexpensive, readily available produce into something nourishing and satisfying. Both vegetables stored well through the colder months, making them dependable staples for families stretching every penny without sacrificing flavor. The origins of this dish lie in frugality and creativity. Peeling, chopping, boiling, and mashing these roots with a little butter or milk produced a tender, creamy texture. A pinch of salt, pepper, or even nutmeg enhanced their natural sweetness. Some households added a dash of sugar to give it a festive touch for special meals, while everyday versions provided a wholesome, comforting side that complemented roasts or stews. Preparing carrot and parsnip mash today is just as simple and evocative. Boil the vegetables until soft, mash with a touch of butter or cream, season, and serve warm. The dish evokes kitchens filled with care, tables with family gathered, and the quiet joy of turning modest ingredients into something memorable. Each bite carries the flavors, resilience, and ingenuity of Depression-era cooks, a gentle reminder that simplicity can be luxurious. Cornbread dressing. There's a certain nostalgia baked into every spoonful of cornbread dressing, a dish that embodies both the resourcefulness and the warmth of Depression-era kitchens. In the 1930s, families needed meals that could feed a crowd with minimal expense, and cornbread, with its simple ingredients and filling nature, became the perfect base for a dressing that could stretch across tables and generations alike. This dish was more than just a side. It was a symbol of comfort, ingenuity, and the kind of cooking that turned necessity into a culinary tradition. The origins of cornbread dressing are deeply rooted in practicality. Leftover cornbread, often baked in a cast iron skillet with nothing more than cornmeal, water, or milk, and a touch of fat, was crumbled and mixed with onions, herbs, and sometimes a splash of stock or milk to create a soft, flavorful filling. In many households, small bits of leftover meat or bacon drippings were folded in, adding richness without the need for additional costly ingredients. The mixture was then baked until the edges were crisp and golden, leaving a tender, flavorful center that absorbed all the comforting aromas of the season. Preparing cornbread dressing today is a lesson in patience and respect for simple ingredients. Freshly baked cornbread can be used, or even slightly stale bread works beautifully, torn into crumbs and combined with sautéed onions, a dash of celery if available, and herbs like sage and thyme. A bit of stock or milk binds the mixture together, and baking it slowly allows the top to develop a delicate crust while the interior remains moist and savory. The result is a dish that feels rustic yet indulgent, earthy yet comforting. A testament to the ingenuity of cooks who could transform humble leftovers into a centerpiece. The emotional resonance of cornbread dressing is unmistakable. It evokes images of family tables at Thanksgiving or Sunday dinners, the scent of baked bread and herbs mingling with the laughter and chatter of loved ones. In an era dominated by fast meals and pre-packaged convenience, this dish reminds us that care, tradition, and creativity can elevate the simplest ingredients into something memorable. Each bite carries not just flavor, but a connection to the resilience and resourcefulness of the families who first made it, proving that the heart of home cooking often lies in what's humble, practical, and lovingly prepared. Hominy and sausage stew. There's a quiet satisfaction in a steaming bowl of hominy and sausage stew, a dish that embodies both the resourcefulness and resilience of Depression-era kitchens. Hominy, with its subtle, nutty flavor and hearty texture, stretched meals and filled bellies without straining budgets, while sausage, often purchased in small portions or made from leftover cuts, added savory depth and protein. Together, they created a one-pot meal that was simple, comforting, and capable of feeding a family through long autumn evenings. The origins of this stew lie in practicality. Hominy was inexpensive and shelf-stable, absorbing the flavors of any seasonings or scraps available, while sausage added richness that elevated the dish. Onions, bay leaves, or a sprinkle of herbs enhanced the aroma, and slow simmering allowed the flavors to meld. Today, preparing this stew remains straightforward. Brown the sausage to release its fat, sauté onions and spices, add hominy with stock or water, and simmer until tender. A dash of black pepper or hot sauce modernizes it, but the essence remains the same: hearty, simple, and flavorful. The emotional resonance of hominy and sausage stew comes from its embodiment of comfort and ingenuity. Steam rising from bowls evokes kitchens where families gathered around tables, and each spoonful carries the history, care, and quiet pride of cooks who made every meal matter. It's more than sustenance, it's a taste of resilience and tradition. Sweet potato hash. There's a rustic charm to sweet potato hash, a dish that transforms humble roots into something hearty, flavorful, and deeply satisfying. During the Great Depression, sweet potatoes were prized for being inexpensive, filling, and versatile, appearing in both savory and sweet dishes. Families relied on them not only for nutrition, but also for their natural sweetness, making sweet potato hash a practical, one-pan solution that could feed multiple mouths with minimal ingredients. The origins of this dish lie in frugality and creativity. Sweet potatoes were diced and combined with onions, a little fat from bacon or drippings, and a pinch of salt and pepper. Some households added sugar, molasses, herbs, or a splash of stock to enhance depth. Cooking slowly in a skillet allowed the edges to caramelize while the interior remained tender, giving each bite a balance of crispness and creaminess. Preparing sweet potato hash today preserves that simplicity. Dice potatoes, cook with oil or butter, add onions and seasonings, and let them brown while softening. The smell alone recalls kitchens where care and patience turned modest ingredients into something satisfying. Each forkful evokes home, harvest, and ingenuity, proving that even humble roots can create lasting, comforting flavors. Fried cabbage and bacon. Few aromas evoke home like sizzling bacon mingling with earthy cabbage. During the Great Depression, fried cabbage and bacon was a staple, a dish born from necessity, yet rich with flavor. Cabbage was inexpensive and nutritious, while bacon, used sparingly, added smoky fat that elevated the humble vegetable. This was Depression-era ingenuity at its finest, stretching small portions into meals that satisfied the whole family. The origins of the dish lie in thrift and practicality. Rendered bacon fat provided the cooking medium, infusing the cabbage with richness without butter or oil. Onions, if available, added sweetness and aroma. The preparation was simple. Shred cabbage, chop bacon, fry slowly until tender with slightly caramelized edges. The sizzling sound and fragrant aroma signaled warmth and nourishment. Today, fried cabbage and bacon remains easy and satisfying. Cook bacon pieces until fat is released, then toss in cabbage and cook gently until soft and slightly crisp. A pinch of salt and pepper completes the flavor. Its emotional resonance comes from its connection to family, resourcefulness, and comfort. Every bite carries the taste of resilience and the enduring charm of humble, honest cooking. Butternut squash. Soup. There's a golden warmth in a bowl of butternut squash soup that feels like autumn itself captured in liquid form. During the Great Depression, this soup was a comforting, affordable way to make the most of seasonal vegetables. Butternut squash, with its naturally sweet flesh and hearty texture, was often grown in home gardens or bought inexpensively at local markets. Combined with simple staples like onions, a bit of fat, and water or stock, it became a dish that nourished both body and spirit, proving that even in hard times, food could be flavorful and satisfying. The origins of butternut squash soup are rooted in necessity and ingenuity. Families needed meals that could stretch to feed many, and a single squash could provide enough sustenance for several portions. Onions and garlic were often sautéed in a little butter or drippings to build flavor, while the squash was cubed and simmered until tender. Some households added a splash of milk or cream if it was available, turning the soup silky and rich without relying on expensive ingredients. Spices were minimal, perhaps a pinch of salt, pepper, or nutmeg, but each element highlighted the natural sweetness and creaminess of the squash, creating a dish that was deceptively simple yet deeply satisfying. Preparing butternut squash soup today is both easy and meditative. The squash is peeled, seeded, and cut into cubes, then simmered with onions in stock or water until soft. Blending the mixture yields a smooth, velvety consistency, while a drizzle of cream or a swirl of olive oil can modernize the dish without overwhelming its natural flavors. The scent of cooking squash fills the kitchen, evoking the cozy, comforting essence of autumn and the quiet ingenuity of Depression-era cooks who knew how to coax richness from humble vegetables. The emotional resonance of butternut squash soup comes from its warmth, simplicity, and connection to home. It conjures images of family tables in cooler months, bowls steaming with golden liquid, and the sense that even modest ingredients can produce something nourishing and memorable. In today's fast-paced world, this soup reminds us that comfort, care, and flavor don't require extravagance. Every spoonful carries history, ingenuity, and the enduring magic of seasonal, thoughtfully prepared food. Beet and onion slaw. There's a vivid charm in a plate of beet and onion slaw. The deep crimson of the beets contrasted with the pale, sharp bite of onions, all lightly dressed to balance earthiness with tang. During the Great Depression, this simple side dish was a staple for families seeking affordable, nutritious ways to complement heavier meals. Beets were inexpensive, grew easily in home gardens, and stored well through the cooler months, while onions added a punch of flavor and versatility. Together, they created a dish that was fresh, colorful, and surprisingly satisfying for its simplicity. The origins of beet and onion slaw are rooted in practicality and frugality. Families relied on seasonal vegetables to stretch meals, and this slaw required nothing more than a few basic ingredients: beets, onions, vinegar, and a touch of sugar or molasses if available. Some households added a sprinkle of salt or a dash of black pepper, enhancing the natural flavors without relying on expensive condiments. The preparation was straightforward. The beets were boiled or roasted until tender, then sliced or shredded and mixed with thinly sliced onions and a tangy dressing. This dish could be served immediately or chilled, making it a versatile companion to stews, roasted meats, or simple bread and butter meals. Preparing beet and onion slaw today preserves the same satisfying simplicity. Tender roasted or boiled beets are combined with crisp, raw onions, then dressed lightly with vinegar, a bit of sweetener, and a pinch of salt and pepper. The resulting salad is earthy, slightly sweet, and refreshingly tangy, with a texture that balances soft and crisp with every bite. Its vibrant color makes it as visually appealing as it is flavorful, a reminder that even humble ingredients can create a dish that delights the senses. The emotional resonance of beet and onion slaw comes from its ties to resourcefulness, family, and tradition. It evokes images of kitchens where simple, seasonal ingredients were transformed into something nourishing and satisfying, even during hard times. In today's era of convenience foods and flashy side dishes, this slaw reminds us that flavor, nutrition, and beauty can coexist in the simplest forms. Each forkful carries the ingenuity and care of Depression-era cooks, proving that thoughtful preparation can turn modest vegetables into a memorable culinary experience. Pumpkin and raisin loaf. There's something quietly comforting about a slice of pumpkin and raisin loaf. The warm aroma of spices mingling with the natural sweetness of pumpkin and the chewy surprise of raisins evokes autumn kitchens filled with care and tradition. During the Great Depression, this loaf was a practical yet indulgent treat, a way to turn inexpensive, readily available ingredients into a dessert or snack that felt special. Pumpkin, often homegrown or purchased cheaply at local markets, provided moisture and flavor, while raisins, small and potent, added texture and natural sweetness, stretching the loaf without relying on expensive sugar or eggs. The origins of pumpkin and raisin loaf are deeply rooted in frugality and creativity. Families needed baked goods that could feed multiple mouths while using minimal ingredients. And this loaf fit the bill perfectly. A simple mixture of mashed pumpkin, flour, a touch of sweetener, and a few eggs, combined with raisins and a sprinkle of warm spices such as cinnamon, nutmeg, or cloves, created a tender, fragrant loaf. Some households added a small amount of fat, often butter or rendered shortening, to enrich the texture, while others relied solely on the pumpkin's moisture. Baked slowly, the loaf developed a slightly caramelized crust and a soft, spiced interior, offering both comfort and sustenance. Preparing pumpkin and raisin loaf today is a reminder of the ingenuity of Depression-era cooks. The pumpkin is mashed until smooth, mixed with flour, eggs, sweetener, and spices, and folded together with plump raisins. As it bakes, the kitchen fills with the scent of autumn, cinnamon, and baking bread, a sensory echo of the kitchen's past. Each slice is tender, lightly sweet, and warmly spiced, perfect with a pat of butter, a drizzle of honey, or simply on its own. The emotional resonance of pumpkin and raisin loaf comes from its simplicity, warmth, and connection to family traditions. It evokes scenes of homes where resourcefulness met comfort, where even modest ingredients were transformed into something nourishing and celebratory. In today's world of instant desserts and packaged baked goods, this loaf reminds us that flavor, care, and memory can live in humble, thoughtfully prepared dishes. Every bite carries the ingenuity, resilience, and heart of those who first baked it, proving that sometimes the simplest ingredients leave the most lasting impression. Minced meat pie. There's a certain hearty charm in a well-made minced meat pie, a dish that embodies both practicality and comfort. During the Great Depression, this pie was a clever solution for families who needed meals that were filling, affordable, and flexible. Leftover cuts of meat, trimmings, or even small amounts of preserved meat could be minced and combined with vegetables or seasonings, then encased in a simple pastry or biscuit topping. What emerged was a portable, satisfying meal that stretched ingredients and nourished both body and spirit during lean times. The origins of minced meat pie lie in resourcefulness and tradition. Families could adapt whatever they had on hand: ground beef, pork, or even game, mixed with onions, carrots, or potatoes, bound together with a little flour, and seasoned lightly with salt, pepper, or dried herbs. The filling was then placed in a basic dough shell, sometimes as a double crust pie, sometimes with just a crumbly top. The pie was baked until the crust turned golden and flaky, and the filling bubbled with savory richness. Every pie reflected the ingenuity of its maker, transforming modest ingredients into a meal that could feed a family or provide lunches for the week. Preparing minced meat pie today is a simple way to honor that tradition. Finely chopped or ground meat is combined with sautéed vegetables, a touch of fat, and seasoning. The mixture is spooned into a prepared crust, then topped with another layer of pastry or simple breadcrumbs for texture. Baking it fills the kitchen with the smell of caramelizing meat and warm dough, evoking images of Depression-era households making the most of every morsel. The result is a savory, satisfying dish that feels rustic and wholesome. The emotional resonance of minced meat pie lies in its blend of practicality and care. It evokes kitchens where families transformed leftovers into meals that were nourishing, comforting, and shareable. In today's world of pre-packaged convenience foods, this pie reminds us that thoughtful preparation, even from humble ingredients, can produce something memorable. Each bite carries the taste of ingenuity, tradition, and resilience, a tribute to the cooks who created comfort and sustenance in even the toughest of times. Apple dumplings. There's a nostalgic magic in apple dumplings, where tender pastry hugs sweet spiced apples and bakes into a golden, fragrant comfort that fills a kitchen with warmth. During the Great Depression, apple dumplings were a beloved dessert or snack, a way to make inexpensive seasonal fruit feel indulgent. Apples were often grown in home orchards or purchased cheaply, and simple pantry staples, flour, fat, and a touch of sugar or molasses, transformed them into a dish that carried both sweetness and satisfaction. It was a recipe that stretched limited resources while creating a sense of celebration at the table. The origins of apple dumplings are rooted in ingenuity and practicality. Families would peel and core the apples, sometimes sprinkling them with cinnamon or nutmeg, then wrap them in a simple dough made from flour and a bit of fat. A drizzle of syrup, sugar, or leftover molasses often accompanied the apples before baking, giving the dumplings a warm, caramelized finish. Some households added a splash of milk to the dough or filling to enrich it, while others kept it simple, letting the apple's natural juices and flavor shine through. The result was a tender, slightly sweet pastry with a soft, flavorful apple center, comfort in every bite. Preparing apple dumplings today remains a simple pleasure. The apples are prepared, wrapped in pastry, and baked until golden, with syrup or butter adding a final touch of richness. The kitchen fills with the smell of baked apples, cinnamon, and warm dough, a sensory reminder of the kitchen's past and the care that went into every meal. Served warm, perhaps with a spoonful of cream or a dusting of sugar, they are rustic, fragrant, and deeply satisfying. The emotional resonance of apple dumplings comes from their ties to family, tradition, and seasonal rhythm. They evoke images of autumn afternoons, children eagerly waiting for dessert, and households finding comfort in simple, thoughtfully prepared food. In a modern era of instant desserts and packaged sweets, apple dumplings remind us that true satisfaction comes from care, patience, and creativity. Each bite carries the taste of history, resourcefulness, and the enduring joy of turning humble ingredients into something memorable and heartwarming. Corn pudding. There's a quiet, golden comfort in a warm serving of corn pudding, a dish that feels like sunshine captured in a casserole. During the Great Depression, corn pudding was a staple in many households, a way to turn simple, inexpensive ingredients into a hearty side or even a light meal. Corn, whether fresh, canned, or from dried kernels soaked and cooked, was plentiful and affordable, while eggs, milk, or a bit of butter added richness that made the pudding feel special without requiring extravagant ingredients. This humble dish became a symbol of ingenuity, sustenance, and homey comfort in tough times. The origins of corn pudding lie in practicality and versatility. Families needed dishes that could stretch ingredients and feed multiple mouths, and corn pudding delivered on both counts. The basic preparation involved mixing corn with eggs, milk, a little flour or cornmeal, and a touch of fat to bind it together, then baking it slowly until golden and set. Some households added a dash of sugar or a sprinkle of herbs to tweak the flavor, making it either sweet or savory depending on what was on the table. The result was a dish that was tender, slightly custardy in texture, and subtly sweet or savory, adaptable to any meal. Preparing corn pudding today remains an exercise in simplicity and comfort. Fresh or canned corn is combined with eggs, milk, and a small amount of fat, then seasoned and baked until the edges turn golden and the center is just set. The aroma of baking corn and richness fills the kitchen, evoking memories of family dinners and slow, deliberate cooking that nourished both body and spirit. Its texture, soft, slightly creamy, and lightly golden on top, is a gentle reminder of the care baked into every Depression-era meal. The emotional resonance of corn pudding comes from its ties to home, resourcefulness, and comfort. It evokes kitchens where families transformed basic pantry staples into dishes that fed, satisfied, and even delighted. In today's fast-paced world, this simple casserole reminds us that thoughtful preparation, patience, and humble ingredients can create meals that are both nourishing and memorable. Each bite carries the flavor of history, resilience, and the quiet ingenuity of cooks who made every meal count. Chestnut soup. There's an understated elegance in a bowl of chestnut soup. Its creamy texture and earthy sweetness offering both warmth and nourishment. During the Great Depression, chestnuts were an affordable and accessible ingredient, often foraged from local trees or purchased inexpensively at markets. This soup became a staple for families seeking to create something satisfying and special from humble, readily available resources. It was a dish that could elevate a simple meal, providing richness and comfort without requiring costly or extravagant ingredients. The origins of chestnut soup lie in practicality and ingenuity. Chestnuts were boiled or roasted, then peeled and pureed to create a creamy base, often combined with onions, a touch of fat such as butter or lard, and a splash of stock or water. Some households added a hint of seasoning, salt, pepper, or a pinch of herbs to highlight the natural flavor of the nuts, while others enriched the soup with milk or cream when available. The result was a velvety, subtly sweet, and earthy soup that could be served as a starter or a light main, warming both the body and spirit on chilly days. Preparing chestnut soup today is a simple yet rewarding process. The chestnuts are cooked until tender, pureed into a smooth consistency, and simmered with aromatics like onions and herbs. A splash of cream or milk adds silkiness, while careful seasoning ensures the earthy flavor of the chestnuts shines through. The aroma alone evokes the comfort of autumn and winter kitchens, filled with care and the quiet creativity of cooks making the most of seasonal ingredients. The emotional resonance of chestnut soup lies in its connection to tradition, resilience, and seasonal bounty. It evokes images of family gatherings, the anticipation of a warm meal after a long day, and kitchens where simplicity was transformed into comfort and elegance. In today's era of processed foods and convenience, chestnut soup reminds us that flavor, nourishment, and satisfaction can emerge from humble ingredients when handled with care. Each spoonful carries the taste of history, resourcefulness, and the quiet ingenuity of cooks who turned the ordinary into the extraordinary. Lentil and ham soup. There's something quietly satisfying about a bowl of lentil and ham soup, a dish that marries humble ingredients into hearty, comforting nourishment. During the Great Depression, this soup was a lifeline for families seeking affordable, filling meals that could feed many mouths. Lentils were inexpensive, shelf-stable, and packed with protein, while small pieces of ham, often leftover or cured, added richness and savory depth, transforming a simple legume-based broth into a satisfying centerpiece for the table. The origins of lentil and ham soup are rooted in frugality and ingenuity. Families needed dishes that could stretch small amounts of meat and pantry staples into multiple meals, and lentils were perfect for the job. Onions, carrots, and celery were often added to enhance flavor and bulk, while seasonings like bay leaf, thyme, or pepper brought warmth and complexity to the broth. The ham, sometimes just a bone with a little meat attached, simmered slowly with the lentils, releasing smoky richness that permeated the soup and elevated it from humble sustenance to a dish that could warm both body and spirit. Preparing lentil and ham soup today is simple, yet it preserves the essence of its history. The lentils are rinsed and combined with sautéed onions, carrots, and celery, then simmered with chunks or shavings of ham. As the soup cooks, the lentils soften and absorb the smoky, savory flavors, creating a thick, hearty broth that tastes far more indulgent than its ingredients might suggest. A final seasoning adjustment balances the earthiness of the lentils with the richness of the ham, resulting in a deeply satisfying, rustic dish. The emotional resonance of lentil and ham soup comes from its connection to resilience, family, and home-cooked care. It evokes kitchens where families transformed modest ingredients into meals that nourished both body and spirit, where the simple act of simmering soup became an exercise in love and ingenuity. In today's age of convenience meals and instant flavors, this soup reminds us that patience, resourcefulness, and thoughtful preparation can produce dishes that are both memorable and comforting. Every spoonful carries the taste of history and the enduring creativity of cooks who made the most of what they had. Fried apples with cracked pepper. There's a surprising twist of flavor in fried apples with cracked pepper, a dish that turns simple fruit into a warm, slightly spicy treat that lingers on the palate. During the Great Depression, apples were abundant, inexpensive, and versatile, making them a staple in kitchens across the country. Most often used in sweet preparations, some inventive cooks discovered that a hint of freshly cracked pepper could elevate the natural sweetness of apples, creating a sophisticated contrast without needing costly ingredients. This was a dish that celebrated ingenuity and a willingness to experiment, even in tough times. The origins of fried apples with cracked pepper lie in both thrift and creativity. Apples were peeled and sliced, then sautéed slowly in a small amount of fat, usually butter or rendered bacon fat, until tender and lightly caramelized. A sprinkle of sugar or a drizzle of molasses might enhance their sweetness, while a dusting of freshly cracked black pepper added unexpected warmth and depth. This combination transformed a humble fruit into something flavorful and memorable, perfect as a side dish, a topping for pancakes or bread, or even eaten on its own as a simple, comforting snack. Preparing fried apples with cracked pepper today preserves the elegance of this Depression-era recipe. The apples are sliced evenly, cooked gently in a hot pan with a little fat, and finished with sugar and a liberal grind of pepper. As the apples soften, their natural juices mingle with the fat, creating a glossy, fragrant coating. The aroma of caramelized fruit, mingled with the subtle bite of pepper, fills the kitchen, a sensory reminder of kitchens past where ingenuity and care turned basic ingredients into memorable dishes. The emotional resonance of fried apples with cracked pepper comes from its inventive simplicity. It evokes images of families discovering new ways to enjoy familiar foods, of kitchens where creativity thrived despite scarcity, and of meals that combined warmth, flavor, and comfort. In today's world of predictable sweet treats, this dish reminds us that subtle contrasts and thoughtful touches can make simple ingredients extraordinary. Every bite carries history, resilience, and the quiet joy of culinary experimentation that has endured across generations. Potato pancakes. There's a comforting golden crispness to potato pancakes that makes them irresistible, a humble dish that was a lifeline for many during the Great Depression. Potatoes were cheap, filling, and widely available, and transforming them into pancakes was a clever way to create a meal or side dish that felt satisfying and even indulgent. With just a handful of simple ingredients, potatoes, a bit of flour, and sometimes an egg, families could feed multiple mouths while making the most of what they had. The origins of potato pancakes lie in frugality and ingenuity. Grated potatoes were often squeezed dry, mixed with a little flour and seasoning, and sometimes bound with an egg if available. Onions could be added for flavor, and a bit of fat, lard, bacon drippings, or oil was used for frying. The mixture was shaped into small patties and cooked until golden and crisp on the outside, tender inside. They were versatile too, served with a dollop of applesauce, a sprinkle of sugar, or even plain alongside a hearty stew. Potato pancakes were nourishing, inexpensive, and beloved. Preparing potato pancakes today remains a tactile, rewarding experience. Potatoes are grated and squeezed to remove excess moisture, combined with flour, seasoning, and egg if desired, then fried in a hot pan until crisp and golden. The smell of frying potatoes fills the kitchen, evoking memories of cozy home cooking and the care that went into making even the simplest dishes special. Crispy edges, tender centers, and a savory sweet aroma create a dish that is both comforting and timeless. The emotional resonance of potato pancakes comes from their connection to home, resourcefulness, and shared meals. They evoke images of families gathered around the table, kitchens warm with the scent of frying potatoes, and the satisfaction of turning simple, inexpensive ingredients into something delicious. In today's era of instant convenience foods, potato pancakes remind us that patience, creativity, and care can transform modest ingredients into something memorable. Every bite carries the flavor of history, ingenuity, and the enduring appeal of humble, lovingly prepared food. Molasses brown bread. There's a deep, comforting richness in molasses brown bread, a humble loaf that carries both flavor and history with every slice. During the Great Depression, this bread was a practical staple, inexpensive, filling, and easy to make with pantry basics like flour, baking soda, and, most importantly, molasses. Molasses provided sweetness, moisture, and iron-rich nutrients, transforming simple grains into a loaf that could nourish families and satisfy cravings without the need for costly sugar or fancy ingredients. The origins of molasses brown bread lie in necessity and ingenuity. Flour, often a mix of whole wheat and rye, was combined with molasses, a pinch of salt, and baking soda or powder to leaven the bread. Some households added cornmeal for texture, while others folded in oats or seeds to stretch the dough and add interest. The mixture was poured into a greased loaf pan or traditional molds and baked slowly, creating a dense, slightly sweet bread with a tender crumb and a deep caramelized crust. Its flavor was hearty yet approachable, making it ideal for breakfast with butter, alongside soups, or simply toasted with a drizzle of molasses. Baking molasses brown bread today is both straightforward and nostalgic. The ingredients are combined, the batter is poured into a pan, and the loaf is baked until it is golden brown with the fragrant, slightly sticky crust. The aroma of sweet molasses and earthy grains filling the kitchen evokes memories of home, family, and kitchens where resourcefulness turned modest ingredients into something memorable. Cutting into a fresh loaf reveals a tender, moist interior, dense enough to be satisfying, yet soft enough to carry the sweetness of the molasses with each bite. The emotional resonance of molasses brown bread comes from its connection to sustenance, tradition, and resilience. It evokes kitchens, where families stretched limited resources into meals that nourished both body and spirit, and where the simple act of baking bread was an exercise in care and ingenuity. In today's world of processed bread and quick fixes, this loaf reminds us that flavor, nutrition, and satisfaction can be found in humble, thoughtfully prepared food. Every slice carries history, comfort, and the enduring creativity of cooks who made every ingredient count. Chicken and dumplings. There's an undeniable comfort in a bowl of chicken and dumplings, a dish that has long been a symbol of home, warmth, and resourcefulness. During the Great Depression, families relied on every part of the chicken, sometimes even older birds or leftovers, to create a meal that was both nourishing and filling. The dumplings, made from simple flour, water, and a pinch of salt, stretch the meal further, turning a modest pot of chicken and broth into a hearty, satisfying feast for the whole family. The origins of chicken and dumplings are rooted in practicality and frugality. Chicken was simmered slowly with onions, carrots, and sometimes a few herbs, creating a rich, flavorful broth. The dumplings, dropped in toward the end of cooking, absorbed that savory goodness, swelling into tender pillows that complemented the meat perfectly. In some households, a bit of milk or butter was stirred in to enrich the broth, but the beauty of the dish lay in its simplicity, each ingredient doing double duty, flavoring and nourishing in equal measure. This was comfort food in its purest form, providing warmth, sustenance, and a sense of home during hard times. Preparing chicken and dumplings today is a cozy, hands-on experience that honors that tradition. Chicken is simmered with vegetables until tender, the broth developing a deep, savory flavor. Dumplings are mixed from flour, water, and salt, then dropped into the simmering pot, cooking until light and fluffy. The smell of the chicken and herbs mingling with the dumplings filling the kitchen is evocative, calling forth memories of family meals and kitchens where care and patience transformed simple ingredients into something extraordinary. The emotional resonance of chicken and dumplings comes from its ties to family, warmth, and resilience. It evokes scenes of tables filled with loved ones, bowls of steaming broth, and tender dumplings providing comfort and nourishment in challenging times. In today's world of convenience meals and pre-packaged soups, this dish reminds us that patience, care, and humble ingredients can create something timeless and deeply satisfying. Every bite carries the flavor of history, home, and the enduring ingenuity of cooks who turned necessity into comfort. Rutabaga mash. There's a quiet, earthy satisfaction in a bowl of rutabaga mash, a dish that turns an often overlooked root vegetable into a creamy, flavorful side. During the Great Depression, rutabagas were inexpensive, hearty, and easy to store through the winter months, making them a reliable staple for families seeking nourishment on a budget. With a little fat, salt, and pepper, this humble vegetable could be transformed into a comforting accompaniment to roasts, stews, or simple weeknight dinners, proving that even the most modest ingredients could be elevated with care. The origins of rutabaga mash lie in frugality and practicality. Families needed side dishes that were filling, nutritious, and made from accessible ingredients. Rutabagas were peeled, boiled until tender, and then mashed with whatever fat was on hand, often butter, lard, or drippings from cooked meat. A pinch of salt and pepper enhanced the natural sweetness and subtle, earthy flavor of the root, while some households added a splash of milk or cream if available to achieve a smoother, richer texture. The result was a dish that was simple, hearty, and satisfying, a true reflection of Depression-era ingenuity. Preparing rutabaga mash today is equally simple and rewarding. The rutabagas are peeled, chopped, and boiled until soft, then mashed until creamy. Butter, cream, or a little olive oil can be stirred in, and seasoning adjusted to taste. The earthy aroma and soft, velvety texture make it a comforting side dish that pairs beautifully with roasted meats or vegetable mains. Even without embellishment, the mash feels warm, rustic, and nourishing, a reminder that simplicity can be deeply satisfying. The emotional resonance of rutabaga mash comes from its ties to resourcefulness, home cooking, and resilience. It evokes kitchens where families made the most of inexpensive ingredients, transforming them into dishes that were both nourishing and flavorful. In today's world of convenience foods, this humble mash reminds us that comfort and satisfaction can come from modest, thoughtfully prepared ingredients. Every spoonful carries history, care, and the quiet ingenuity of cooks who turned necessity into a meal worth savoring. Clam chowder with saltines. There's a timeless comfort in a steaming bowl of clam chowder paired with crisp saltines, a dish that evokes the scent of the sea, warmth, and home-cooked care. During the Great Depression, clam chowder was a way for coastal families and inland households alike to stretch simple ingredients into a rich, satisfying meal. Canned or fresh clams, potatoes, onions, and a splash of milk or cream combined to create a creamy, hearty soup, while saltines added a bit of crunch and substance, making each bowl feel complete without requiring expensive bread or accompaniments. The origins of clam chowder lie in frugality and adaptability. Clams provided protein at a low cost, and their briny flavor infused the broth with depth. Potatoes and onions, inexpensive and filling, gave the soup body, while a modest amount of milk or cream created a velvety texture without overindulgence. Some households enriched the soup with a little bacon or rendered fat, turning it into a dish that could feed a family on even the tightest budget. The use of saltines, simple shelf-stable crackers, added crunch and a touch of novelty, demonstrating Depression-era ingenuity in creating meals that felt hearty and complete. Preparing clam chowder with saltines today is straightforward, yet it preserves the comforting simplicity of its history. Clams, whether canned or fresh, are simmered with diced potatoes, onions, and seasonings until tender. Milk or cream is added to create a smooth, creamy broth, and the chowder is finished with a sprinkle of black pepper and a handful of fresh herbs if desired. Served with saltines on the side or crumbled on top, the chowder balances creaminess with a slight crunch, making each spoonful satisfying and nostalgic. The emotional resonance of clam chowder with saltines comes from its combination of warmth, simplicity, and ingenuity. It evokes images of family kitchens where modest ingredients were transformed into memorable, nourishing meals. In today's world of convenient soups and pre-packaged meals, this dish reminds us that flavor, texture, and comfort can come from simple, thoughtfully prepared ingredients. Every spoonful carries the taste of history, coastal ingenuity, and the enduring magic of humble, home-cooked food. Pork and sauerkraut casserole. There's a tangy, hearty comfort in a pork and sauerkraut casserole, a dish that combines savory richness with a bright, fermented punch. During the Great Depression, this casserole was a practical and satisfying way to feed families on a budget. Pork, often in the form of a small roast shoulder or leftover cuts, provided protein and flavor, while sauerkraut, a preserved cabbage staple, added acidity, nutrition, and bulk. Together, they created a dish that was filling, affordable, and capable of warming both body and spirit on cool autumn or winter evenings. The origins of pork and sauerkraut casserole lie in resourcefulness and practicality. Families relied on preserved foods to stretch meals through lean months, and the tang of sauerkraut balanced the richness of pork beautifully. Onions, a splash of stock or water, and a pinch of seasoning, sometimes caraway seeds or black pepper, enhanced the flavor, while slow baking allowed the pork to tenderize and absorb the sauerkraut's tangy essence. In some households, a small amount of sugar or apples was added to soften the acidity, creating a subtle balance that transformed simple ingredients into a cohesive, satisfying dish. Preparing pork and sauerkraut casserole today is a rustic, comforting process. The pork is seared to lock in flavor, then layered or mixed with drained sauerkraut, onions, and seasonings before being baked slowly until tender. The kitchen fills with a heady aroma of roasted pork, caramelized onions, and fermented tang, evoking images of Depression-era kitchens where careful preparation turned humble ingredients into meals that nourished families and lifted spirits. The finished casserole is tender, flavorful, and hearty, with a pleasant balance between the richness of the pork and the bright tang of the sauerkraut. The emotional resonance of pork and sauerkraut casserole comes from its connection to tradition, ingenuity, and home cooking. It evokes tables where families gathered to share simple yet satisfying meals, kitchens where preservation and resourcefulness shaped every dish, and the comfort of a dish that delivers both flavor and sustenance. In today's era of convenience meals, this casserole reminds us that modest ingredients, thoughtful preparation, and a touch of patience can create a dish that is both memorable and comforting. Each bite carries the history, resilience, and creativity of cooks who made every meal matter. Acorn squash with honey. There's a simple, golden sweetness in acorn squash with honey that embodies the warmth and ingenuity of Depression-era cooking. Acorn squash was an affordable, hearty vegetable, easy to grow in home gardens or purchased cheaply at markets, and it stored well through the colder months. Families transformed this humble squash into a comforting side dish by roasting it until tender and drizzling it with honey, creating a balance of natural sweetness and earthy flavor that made even modest meals feel special. The origins of acorn squash with honey lie in practicality and resourcefulness. Squash was often halved, seeds removed, and the flesh brushed with a little fat or butter before roasting to caramelize its natural sugars. A drizzle of honey or molasses added extra sweetness, while a pinch of salt or a dusting of cinnamon could elevate the flavor even further. In some households, the dish served as both a vegetable and a dessert, stretching inexpensive ingredients into multiple mealtime roles. Its preparation was simple, yet the outcome was visually appealing, fragrant, and deeply satisfying. Preparing acorn squash with honey today is just as straightforward and comforting. The squash is halved, seeded, and roasted cut-side up until tender and lightly caramelized. A touch of butter or oil enhances the richness, and a drizzle of honey finishes the dish with warmth and sweetness. The kitchen fills with the scent of roasted squash, subtle honey notes, and autumn spices if added. A sensory reminder of kitchens past where modest ingredients were treated with care and creativity. The emotional resonance of acorn squash with honey comes from its ties to home, harvest, and thoughtful simplicity. It evokes images of families gathering around the table in fall, enjoying meals that were nourishing, flavorful, and made from what was available. In today's fast-paced, convenience-driven world, this dish reminds us that beauty, comfort, and flavor can be found in humble, thoughtfully prepared ingredients. Every tender, sweet bite carries the legacy of ingenuity, resilience, and the quiet magic of Depression-era kitchens. Creamed corn bake. There's a cozy, golden appeal to creamed corn bake, a dish that turns simple kernels into a creamy, comforting casserole perfect for the family table. During the Great Depression, corn was inexpensive, filling, and widely available, making it a reliable staple for households seeking nourishment on a budget. Creamed corn bake combines accessible ingredients, corn, a bit of fat or milk, and a binder such as eggs or flour, into a warm, satisfying dish that could accompany main courses or even serve as a hearty side on its own. The origins of creamed corn bake are rooted in practicality and resourcefulness. Families needed meals that could stretch ingredients and provide sustenance without relying on costly items. Fresh, canned, or frozen corn was combined with milk or cream, a touch of fat, and a binder to hold the mixture together. Seasoning was simple: salt, pepper, and occasionally a hint of sugar to enhance the natural sweetness of the corn. The casserole was baked slowly until golden and slightly set, creating a dish that was creamy in texture, subtly sweet, and deeply satisfying. Preparing creamed corn bake today preserves the simplicity and charm of its Depression-era roots. Corn is mixed with milk, eggs, and a small amount of butter, oil, then seasoned and poured into a baking dish. The casserole is baked until it is lightly browned on top and set in the center, filling the kitchen with the comforting aroma of sweet corn and warm, creamy richness. Its texture is tender and luscious, a perfect counterpoint to roasted meats or vegetable mains, and it carries the nostalgic warmth of traditional home cooking. The emotional resonance of creamed corn bake comes from its connection to family, comfort, and ingenuity. It evokes kitchens where modest ingredients were transformed into satisfying, memorable dishes, meals that brought warmth and nourishment during challenging times. In today's era of convenience foods, this casserole reminds us that simple, thoughtfully prepared ingredients can deliver flavor, comfort, and satisfaction. Every spoonful carries history, care, and the enduring magic of home cooking that celebrates the resourcefulness and resilience of those who made the most of what they had. Gingerbread with apples. There's a cozy, spiced warmth in gingerbread with apples, a dish that marries the sweet, tart flavor of fruit with the rich, aromatic notes of molasses and ginger. During the Great Depression, this combination was a clever way to make a simple cake feel indulgent without relying on costly ingredients. Apples were affordable and widely available, while gingerbread relied on pantry staples like flour, baking soda, and molasses, making this dessert or snack both accessible and comforting for families stretching tight budgets. The origins of gingerbread with apples lie in practicality, ingenuity, and a desire for flavor, even in lean times. Apples were peeled, sliced, and gently folded into a gingerbread batter or layered atop the batter before baking, allowing their natural juices to seep into the cake and keep it moist. Warm spices such as ginger, cinnamon, and a pinch of cloves complemented the sweetness of the apples and the deep molasses flavor, creating a layered taste that felt luxurious despite its humble components. Sometimes a small amount of fat, like butter or shortening, was added to enrich the cake, but even the simplest versions delivered satisfaction. Preparing gingerbread with apples today is simple yet evocative. The apples are peeled, cored, and sliced or diced, then incorporated into a batter of flour, molasses, sugar, and spices. The cake is baked until golden and fragrant, with the aroma of ginger and warm apples filling the kitchen. A sensory echo of Depression-era homes where care and creativity turned modest ingredients into memorable treats. The finished cake is tender, lightly sweet, and warmly spiced, with pockets of apple that burst with flavor, making every bite comforting and nostalgic. The emotional resonance of gingerbread with apples comes from its ties to home, family, and ingenuity. It evokes kitchens where modest ingredients were transformed into memorable desserts, where flavor and warmth were created from resourcefulness rather than abundance. In today's world of instant sweets and pre-packaged desserts, this gingerbread reminds us that simple ingredients, thoughtful preparation, and a touch of creativity can produce dishes that are both nourishing and joyful. Each bite carries the history, resilience, and comforting magic of home-cooked food. As we wrap up our journey through 30 forgotten fall recipes from the Great Depression, it's clear that simplicity, ingenuity, and care can create dishes that still delight the senses today. From hearty soups and casseroles to sweet treats like gingerbread with apples, these recipes remind us that comfort and flavor often come from humble, thoughtful ingredients. If you enjoyed this trip down culinary memory lane, don't forget to like this video, share it with friends who love nostalgic cooking, and subscribe for more delicious dives into history. Which recipe will you try first? Let us know in the comments.